Hello, Tahoe. This is amazing. Overwhelmed, yeah, a little bit. But yeah, I want to give it up to the Scotty Lap Foundation and Alpenglow Sports. Amy and Jason and Ryan, like, your legacy that you're carrying forth for Scotty is like so special. And also just seeing like all the friends of Scotty and Ryan here running around and rallying, like, hell yeah. Thank you. So my presentation is zigging when life zags, unexpected turns. And yeah, I'm Leanne Pelosi, and I'm a professional snowboarder, and I'm a new mom, sometimes filmmaker as well. But if you asked me this question 20 years ago, I would have definitely said I'm going to be a pro soccer player. But life has a funny way of surprising us. And so how many of you have had a moment in time where your life zigged when you thought you were going to zag? Everybody. And so that defining moment for me was ultimately a car accident that I got into, and I ended up being cut from the Canadian junior national soccer team. It sounds overly dramatic, and it was at that time in my life, but it was a big turning point. And it changed my life completely, and I'm thankful for it. So yeah, that rejection led me on a meandering journey of risk, resilience, and reinvention. And today I'd like to share with you guys a few lessons that I've learned along the way, the unexpected turns. So I'm gonna start a little video.
Scholarship and a spot on the Canadian junior national soccer team, and I lost it all on a Christmas shred trip. I started snowboarding in the late 90s when snowboarding was a fringe sport. At university, our coaches frowned upon it. There was this unspoken rule that we weren't supposed to do that. If you did have a snowboard, you had your finger on the pulse. It was something that we just had to be a part of. But we always felt like we were breaking the rules because we kept getting kicked out of spots. It was just a totally different lifestyle than my conventional life. I was playing for 3 soccer teams, and I was a part of the junior national team program for Canada. My be-all, end-all goal was to play for Team Canada. It was like having 2 opposite lives, and just about to finish my university degree and continue on to do another degree in mechanical engineering. I was at the peak of my performance, and then it came to an abrupt stop. It was Christmas break. We were on our way home from snowboarding. We were in this van that was covered in skulls, painted blue. In the back, there were no windows. There were 2 couches. We had a disco ball, I remember, in the van. We were probably going over 100 kilometers an hour. And the driver ended up falling asleep at the wheel. People went everywhere. There were broken bones, contusions, missing teeth. I shattered my humerus. Yeah, we were just so lucky that everybody actually survived. So shortly after, I had some news from the Canadian national team that I was going to be cut. I lost my carding and my scholarship in an instant. They said, "You were snowboarding, like, is that even a sport? You ruined your life." I felt a huge sense of guilt that I had betrayed my coaches, teammates, my parents that had supported me since day one, and it was my fault. But my brother reminded me that snowboarding was something that I could still do. I didn't need anyone's approval to be happy in the mountains. I feel like sometimes in moments of adversity, you have these moments of clarity, and it couldn't have been more clear for me that this was where my heart wanted to be. What I thought was the worst mistake ever ended up being the best mistake I ever could have made. It's a constant reminder that adversity is an opportunity to grow stronger.
Yeah, so that was crazy. So yeah, I was in that car accident with my brother at the time, and I can still vividly remember flying through the air in slow motion, thinking like, oh my God, this is the time. This is the time when this is when we die. And I just remember being like, this can't be the time. Luckily enough, it wasn't, but subconsciously coming that close between a life or death scenario kind of just made me realize that I needed to chase life on my own terms. So losing the soccer dream, it was tough, but it didn't compare to the realization that life isn't guaranteed. Sometimes life takes an unexpected turn and you're left staring at a blank slate, a path that you get to create. So that's exactly what I did. I packed my car with nothing but a snowboard and a dream, and I moved to Whistler. Yeah. And I'll never forget my dad's words as I packed up to leave. He was like, okay, don't go away and waste your life, okay? And he didn't think that snowboarding was a real plan, and either did I. He wanted me to become an engineer, and I was in the middle of my engineering, and I was like, I just need one season. So yeah, I spent my first season sleeping on a recliner in an overpacked house. I worked just odd jobs. I was a hostess at Earl's, and I landscaped in the summer, and I spent all my money on rent and food, and I snowboarded the rest. So these photos show me wasting away my life, and it was really fun. So I began entering contests because it was fun and exciting, and this was the early 2000s. The poll was obviously the punk rock bands that would come and play live at the contests. Pennywise, Face to Face, I was like full-on punk rock girl, loved it. And eventually something started to click. After a while, I started to do kind of well. Started winning some rail contests and ended up doing a little bit of slope style, and I won the US Open of the overall title at one point in 2005. And at that time, that was my version of the Olympics. Obviously, I didn't get the world recognition or the medal, but it was pretty massive for me. And in between all the contests, I found something even better than that, and that was shooting snowboarding, more relaxed pace. So I started jibbing, and I transitioned into freestyle, and I eventually flowed into natural terrain when my ability got a little better. And that led to honors from Transworld. I went from Rookie of the Year to Rider of the Year within the span of 2 years, back to back. And before I knew it, I was traveling the world. And I was competing and I was snowboarding for a living. It was crazy. So yeah, farewell conventional life and hello snowboard bum. One season turned into 22 years later. So I guess I'm gonna have to call this a forever lifestyle. And Whistler changed everything for me. It's where I discovered the backcountry and where I felt the weightlessness of letting go of expectation. And it's also where I met my partner, Jeff. Oops. What? Sorry. There's Jeff. There he is. That handsome man. We met at the Blackcomb Glacier at the Camp of Champions, and his unique style caught my eye immediately. Yeah. It was a classic mountain town love story. Meet a handsome man, go on the chairlift, he tries to make out with you. You go snowboarding, he shows you some cool runs, you're like, okay, let's do this. So Jeff introduced me into the backcountry, and where snowboarding became less about performing and just more about exploring. So I bought a snowmobile. This beauty had 12,000 kilometers on it, and I called it the Yellow Turtle. And so when I bought it, he was like, so who's taking you out sledding? And I batted my eyelashes, and I was like, I figured my handsome mountain man would. And yeah, so he did. He took me out on the okay days. And so those early days in the backcountry were foundational. They taught me that snowboarding wasn't just about contests. It was about freedom and spending quality time with friends. And if you look closely, there is someone doing a really rad method. I know it's hard to see. Fast forward to a trip of a lifetime in Bella Coola, and that foundation was put to the test. I found myself riding some of the biggest mountain lines that I've ever ridden alongside this Annie Boulanger in yellow. And she was a legendary rider that I admired for years and years. And I watched her video parts over and over. And so, yeah, we were in Bella Coola together. And it was an all-you-can-eat buffet of big mountain lines. And as you can see here, this is what our photographer, UC Grisnar, submitted to Transworld magazine to show them where we were on the face, because we were little ants. He was like, okay, I don't say this often, but it's pretty big terrain. he had like 1,000-millimeter lens. I don't know what it was. But anyways, so yeah, the conditions, as our guide called it at that time, it was a high consequence, low probability kind of scenario. That means there was a huge avalanche cycle the week before we got there, and it had just stabilized. So kind of gave us a rare opportunity to ride these dream lines in perfect conditions. So here's Annie and I riding a line together. She sent me first, and she's like, just go fast. And the power of Annie, like legendary Annie behind me, but also discerning, like, go fast. You're slow. Gave me a little more uppity energy because I didn't want to screw it up. So it felt like terminal velocity for me, board chattering, 2 or 3 turns down this thing. And I get to the bottom, and she's like, why did you go so fast? I'm like, you told me to go fast. Well, we made it down, and it was amazing. It was a line to remember. Being able to ride something like this is rare when you're in like big terrain. So that was pretty cool. And we kept picking lines off to ride. And this particular one, Annie was like, Leanne, you got to keep it on the ground. I told everyone that I was going to do a double line from the top to the bottom, the obvious cliffs. And when I got dropped off there in the helicopter, I was like, oh, yeah, Annie was right. I'm going to zig this one. And so I went around it. And this was my first experience on a trip with like an active mentor. She was like kind of guiding me and telling me what I should and shouldn't do. And I really listened to her wisdom because she had a little bit more experience in this arena. So it was really nice being able to ride with Annie there. And this captures Annie to a T. So in her off season, she's a surfer, and she's getting like straight barreled. And I just think like, yeah, this is an example of where technical mastery and self-expression meet. The video shot is just so cool. She's just like, whoa. So yeah, looking back, it was the early snowboard. Does anyone recognize these VHS movies? This is what sparked my desire to be a part of this culture. I watched the movies before I started snowboarding, and I watched them over and over. It was like True Life, Meltdown Project, The Garden, Standard Films, Mac Dog, all of them. And they weren't just movies for me. They were like portals into the next dimension. Yeah, they were so captivating that I think that like probably thousands of skiers and snowboarders disappointed their parents and moved to the mountains because of them. I'm sure we can all relate. So that's what drew me into filmmaking. It was the chance to be the instigator to do the same thing that I did and chase that mountain lifestyle. I launched Runway Films in the early 2000s. I was still a gibber, and I naturally found myself gravitating towards powder. It wasn't just the thrill of the terrain that drew me in and the adrenaline shot that we all love. It was about immortalizing those magical moments on film where the line becomes a dance and the mountain a backdrop to our unique stories. The raw beauty of the mountains, it never gets old. Every time it's different, from the sparkle of a snowflake to how the snow changes the landscape each season. And as much as I'm drawn to the beauty of the mountain, there's something even more profound about the feeling of moving through these mountains to the beat of our own drums. It's an experience that's almost impossible to put into like fancy words. It's just epic. Can't explain it any other way. And it's a connection that binds us to nature in such a powerful way. Capturing the grace, style, and strength of women in these spaces is as much about celebrating their presence in the mountains as it is about revealing the art in their movement, highlighting their individuality and self-expression. So it's a reminder that the mountains are there for all of us, no matter who we are. So stepping back into the early 2000s, I'm sure you guys recognize these beautiful faces, Annie Boulanger and Victoria Jalous. At that time, backcountry careers for female riders, like in the backcountry, were almost non-existent. But these two women were doing fine. They were totally showing us what was possible in big mountain snowboarding. So I wanted to do that, and I left the contest scene. Remember the X Games, my last X Games contest, I was like, I am not into this. I am going to go to the backcountry. And it came at a cost. I lost most of my sponsors, everything that I had worked so hard to gain. And it felt like starting over and stepping into uncharted territory. It didn't come easy to me. Chasing this dream was really humbling, and it demanded skill, patience, resilience. And so it gave me a chance to rediscover myself, and each step on the way gave me a chance to build for it was the next building block for the future. So over time, the momentum became clear that women were pushing boundaries in the backcountry. This is 2014, and I'm sitting around a dinner night table with Helen and Robin and Marie and Annie and Hannah, and we're just sitting there talking about like what were our plans for the season, what are we gonna do? And it just dawned on all of us that we have all been the token women in projects, so let's change that. So that night, Full Moon was born. And the idea for Full Moon was that we could lead in this space. We created our own vibe, and we brought the best in the sport together, the legends, and the Groms, and who have now gone on to carve their own unique paths in the sport. So on a trip to Baldface, there's Tina Bassich on the left-hand side. She shared a funny story from back in the day, one of which I remember her saying that she bought her first pair of snowboard boots at 7-Eleven, and at the same time, she used pizza boxes to give herself armor to bash the gates in the snowboard races. And here she is about to drop in to a run with some snowboard artifacts, I think, because that board was about 30 years old, and Tom Sims personally gave it to her. And she had a jacket to match. She was full of legendary stories. It was so rad. So yeah, of course, making a snowboard movie isn't easy. We did anything and everything to make it happen. And one of my most memorable moments was selling a lock of Annie Boulanger's hair on Kickstarter, which funded a tank of sled gas to get this shot. So thanks to whoever bought that. Don't know if you're in the crowd tonight, but that shot wouldn't be possible without you. And when we started filming for Full Moon, there was actually no snow at home in Whistler, which is where we planned to film the entire movie. And so we checked out snow forecasts, and we were like, okay, where's the snow? It's got to be somewhere in the world, and it was in a place called Alagna, Italy. So what do? We pivot. We zig our way out of our Whistler bubble. Okay, we finally leave, and we follow the snow. So this is Marie and I finding it. And we were really serious about following the snow, but we didn't take ourselves too seriously. And that is what I loved about this crew and snowboarding in general. So that playful spirit carried on over to Full Moon. And later that year, still no snow at home, we ended up following the annual pilgrimage to Alaska. And we blended the intense riding with pure joy, camaraderie, and the determination to forge a future for women in free riding. And there was 6 of us at the top of this face. It was called Tomahawk. It's a famous face in Haines. And nerves were at an all-time high, but we were stoked. And as I stood there, surrounded by some of the best female snowboarders in the world, I felt this deep reassurance that we were on the right path. And that was a proud moment. That's us at the bottom, just so stoked. And for Jamie Anderson and Elena Height, it was their first time riding in Alaska. And seeing where their careers have taken them since has been a joy to watch. This is Elena Height. She's in the crowd. Let's give her a whoop whoop. Making the cover of the Snowboard Journal from a shot from Alaska. It's so sick. I think this is just rad because Elena is living proof of how we can evolve our path in life. From those X Games half-pipe roots to now backcountry queen. And so looking back, the most rewarding part about making Full Moon was just the bonds that we shared as a crew. You can't get that in many places. We pushed, we squeezed, we managed to get through a door that had barely been cracked open, and we made sure to leave that door wide enough for others to follow. But after the success of Full Moon, burnout hit me like a wave. It was the unexpected turn I did not see coming. I guess I was running on empty and I did not know how to refuel. And I think it's a feeling that is common after finishing big life projects. You pour everything into them, your time, your energy, and when they're done, that void left behind can feel overwhelming. So for a while, I felt detached, I lost motivation, I was sleeping, I couldn't get up, I was drained. I started isolating myself without realizing it. And it was a reminder that pushing endlessly without pause comes at a cost. It forced me to confront what happens when we lose the balance between ambition and rest, and between giving our everything and not giving ourselves enough. So I needed something to pull me out of the fog, and for me, movement became my medicine. I started on the smallest runs with my dog, and each step felt so impossible. I hated it. And it was humbling and strange to hate movement, but I knew I needed it. And slowly, I began to find my way back. So other times, they bring opportunities we could never anticipate. Moments that remind us of the magic in embracing the unexpected. Like this was in Chillán, Chile, and we heard rumblings of a volcano that was spewing ash at this resort. So we went there to check it out. The snow was okay, we were in a safe spot, and we decided to take the opportunity to ride in front of it. We could hear the mountain gurgling, and I'd sit at my drop-in spot, and I'd hear a psst, and I was like, oh, time. It was every 15 minutes or so. So like, oh, gotta get up, gotta go. Because like after this plume of smoke would come out, it would just dissipate really quickly. So it was really cool. All the things had to line up, and Jeff got this shot. And sometimes trips don't go as planned, like the time Christina Lucy invited me on an early season trip with Brett Harrington, alpinist and climber. It was a total sandbag trip. We all know who they are, right? Here's a photo of them way up ahead. Lucy and Brett, they're Wolverines. Fast and furious with no time to spare, even on a warm-up trip in October. I was the St. Bernard that was over-prepared. I brought the wine, and I overpacked so much that we were crying laughing. And at night, I looked at Lucy. She's brushing her teeth, and she's got this cut toothbrush in half. And I was like, what? And she's like, ounces or pounds. But like a good St. Bernard, the slow and steady will always make it there and look out for everyone else. So you know they both drank the wine. Not long after that trip, I find myself filming for Defiance with Victor Delarue and Jake Bovelt. Day one, filming with Defiance, this is what happens. I picked what I thought was the safest line on the face with no real features other than the one that I aired off. And then out of my peripheral, I was like, oh no, you'll see in a second. It's like, boom. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in it. And it's just so crazy because when you're in a situation like this, it's wild how your instincts ground you in calm while every bit of your experience kicks in. This is flow state. I zigged the right way. I kept my board at a 45-degree angle. I barely made it out of the storm. I got my nose up to a safe spot under a rock on the right-hand side. And so looking back, yeah, it wasn't fun. It feels like this moment was a metaphor for my life. Sometimes the only way forward is to pivot and navigate the chaos as it comes. And it made me realize that no matter how much experience you have, the mountains don't discriminate. So reflecting on that avalanche was another stark reminder for me to keep reinvesting into my education. And so I built up on my operations level 1 and my avalanche advanced search and rescue, and I wanted to take the next step and get my CSGA. In Canada, it's CSGA, here it's AMGA. And here's a proud moment of Robin and I getting our level 1. Yeah. So then a few years later, life throws me a crazy curveball. At 40, I had what the nurse called a teenage pregnancy, which makes me laugh. But honestly, it was the shock of my life. But I was with Jeff for like a long time, so like 20 years. And I wasn't really sure how to navigate this chapter. Like, we were doing great without kids. I didn't know if I wanted kids. So I called Hillary, our team captain at the North Face. She was the first person I called to share the news. And her words flipped a switch. She was like, oh, this isn't the end, it's a new beginning. I'm so stoked for you. This is awesome. And you totally got this. And I was like, oh my God, do I? And she shared that when she was pregnant, 6 months pregnant, she remembers ripping Alaskan lions and like, yeah, you should do that. And so I actually just did that. I was like, okay. So I took her advice and I went to Alaska with a baby in my belly, 5 months pregnant. We kind of got skunked, but got to ride this nice, mellow line. And I have a quote from Hillary that I think resonates.
I think it's truly, truly a necessity to have a passion as a compass in life. But to have a passion on some levels really sucks and it's hard. And if it's worth it, you're going to fall on your face several times on your way to like sort of reaching the goal that is the fulfillment of this passion.
Yeah, it's a good life motto. I love how eloquently she speaks. Thank you, Hillary, for inspiring me. And so, yeah, here's our little baby. And as we prepare to welcome this, we look like so green right there. Like, what do we do? Yeah, so we were like, we need the perfect name, something meaningful, something that reflected who we were, maybe somewhere where we've been before. And we decided to name our son after our favorite snowboard run in Whistler. Anybody ridden Kybers before in Whistler or heard of it? Kyber. So yeah, Kyber came into our lives and everything changed. The amount of love I have for him is absolutely overwhelming. And so is the shift in my identity. I used to spend my days crushing to-do lists and spending hours in the mountains with no restrictions. And now I'm forced to stop, slow down, and embrace the season of duality. Excitement to be a part of his life growing up, but also grief for the freedom of my past life. And that duality plays out every day. There are days where I feel like I'm crushing it on the mountain, and then I get home and I wonder if I was there enough for Kyber. And then there are days where I feel like I'm nailing it as a mom, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, my career is suffering. So we're all so guilty. We can all be guilty for piling too much on our plates and trying to show up in multiple roles, and juggling them is a funny balancing act. Sometimes it feels like we're not doing enough in any of them. So this is me trying to juggle the duality of motherhood.
It's sunny. Just doing a little prep before we go sledding.
Yeah, and then there's this. Oh, you can't hear the audio, but Jeff's like, where's my lunch? And then me just taking every second I can to like try to bounce back. Yeah, I felt like my head was in the clouds. I really like keeping it together for the first year, 15 months of Kyber's life. I was just all over the place. It was really hard. And I don't know why, but for some reason I decided to compete in the natural selection 7 months postpartum. Yeah. This is where mom brain hit me really hard. Before dropping in, I struggled with like extreme nerves on the top of the mountain. And on my second run, I let off a small wind slab that you can see here. And I couldn't shake this slide off. My hormones were raging because I was still breastfeeding. And it caught me so off guard, like my emotions were just like all over the place and I couldn't calm myself down. And so in turn, I didn't take my last runs because I had way too many intrusive thoughts. I feel like the world was coming to get me. I was like, what am I doing here? So in hindsight, this may not have been the most gradual, nice re-entry into my sport that I was hoping for. It was actually the furthest thing from it. But the learning here is that just like the backcountry, you cannot force it. This is a quote, that's Gigi Ruff's hand. Took a picture of that because I thought that was funny in Alaska. Yeah, and it was just another reminder to allow myself grace through tough moments. Maybe slow down and smell the roses. But yeah, tough moments are a part of the process and they shape us just as much, if not more, than the good ones. So it's okay to wiggle and not have it all figured out. Let's be honest. We just need a good babysitter.
Yeah? I love your babysitter.
This is, he doesn't really look like that. This was our amazing photographer, Jeff Kryko, stepping in while we were filming in Alaska for Here, Hold My Kid, which is Elise Sogstad's movie. If you haven't seen it, it's really funny. It's on Red Bull TV. So yeah, motherhood has been by far the hardest chapter I've entered, but it has also been by far the most incredible. So to bring both worlds together, this is what some of my best days ever feel like.
I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with a buzz and the sky with no clouds.
Yeah, and now, since becoming a mom, this is my evolution of a best day ever. It might be even better.
I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the
So raising kids alongside people who share a love for the outdoors is a gift. We have a rad mountain community, and we're so lucky to celebrate both family and adventure. It can coexist. And here are some local epic legends. I'm pretty sure we know them. Michelle Parker, Jim Morrison, and Elena Height gracing Kyber with their legendary presence. So yeah, between snowboarding, family, motherhood, community, I'm still navigating it all, and some days are harder than others. But in every challenge, there's beauty. In every joy, there's growth. And through it all, there's love. And the realization of the unexpected turn in life in becoming a mom and navigating my way through has brought me full circle to what I love most, and that's sharing stories that inspire and leading my life with a passion. So the next passion project is Full Moon 2, which will release in fall 26. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a cool project. It'll release a decade after the first movie with a lens on all the women who are currently killing it in backcountry. And here are a few of the new fresh faces to the crew. I think Mia is in the crowd here, and she had photos. And Ellery. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And so our original crew, I coin it the legacy crew now. They'll be out there making strides, and in a world that often glorifies the new and the now, it's easy to overlook the value of experience. But out here, the real currency is accumulated knowledge, patience, and respect for Mother Nature. Those who have weathered decades of storms and faced the risks of the lifestyle that know the backcountry rewards those who take the time to understand its language. So I'm honored to be able to tie it all together and bring this project to life. Together, we will continue to share our passion and experience with the next generation. So to kick it off, we actually had 2 crews in 2 locations on 2 sneaky little trips last winter, even though it's a 2-year project starting this winter. But last spring we went. Mary Rand, Hannah Beeman, and Spencer O'Brien, they went to Haines, and they scored, like really scored. This is Mary Rand on a face called Three Amigos. And this is a quote from her. She says, "Just thinking about that trip and looking through my photos, I get transported right back to the moment. My palms sweat, and I honestly can't even believe it's me. It feels like another version of myself, completely in flow state where nothing else matters, except leveling my nerves by trusting myself and trusting everything that's brought me to this time and place here and now." And then this is a glimpse of what she got into. And I just show kind of like her headspace.
There you go. There you go. Sit on your high point.
It's spicy. You got to give yourself some of that positive self-reinforcement when you're in terrain like that. And this is Hannah Beeman. I think it's Three Amigos as well. And she says, "It was a journey of what makes snowboarding so special. This trip was a reminder of why we all fell in love with Alaska. The thrill, pushing boundaries, taking chances, and being humbled was the magic that these mountains shared." And this is an epic shot. Once again, they killed it. This is Spencer O'Brien on a face called Wedding Dress. And that was most recently on a cover on Snowboard Mag, which is pretty sick. So that's rad. And then the other trip that we went on was in Norway at the same time while the other girls were in Alaska. And the crew was Marion Hardy, Robin Van Gin, Marissa Krozek, and myself. And we were kicking off a relatively new aspect of riding for a full women's snowboard crew. I believe Jeremy Jones calls it Shralpinism. And this is Marissa Krozak. She may be considered an up-and-comer, and she hasn't filmed much before, but that's because she's been clocking hours from California to Washington, summiting mountains, and bringing her on this trip was a quintessential part of the mantra of Full Moon. She is the future, and she's already more comfortable on these peaks than any of us. And this is Marion Hardy. She's the current natural selection champion and holder of several freeride world tour championships. And in the present moment in Norway, she feels like she is ready to conquer the world, and her confidence is infectious. And Robin Van Gin, my longtime shred friend, who has done a few things in snowboarding, and she is taking a mentorship role, but also still killing it and holding her riding strong, and she and I both feed off this ambitious crew. So 10 years ago, I never would have thought that we'd be here, human-powered begging peaks in Lofoten, riding 1,000-foot couloirs down to the ocean. Most of the time, ice axes were out. It was really, I thought it was going to be a mellow trip, and it was really scary. It was like, icy. So we went up one day, and Marion looks across the valley, and she spotted this epic triple couloir. And our guide was like, "Yeah, I think we can get there if we take a boat around the fjord. And we got a tour like 5 hours up, and then there's a cabin. I think we can get there by like the next day." And so we did that. We were like, "Let's do it. That sounds great." We took a boat around the fjord. It was absolutely stunning. And Marion nailed the triple couloir. This isn't actually a photo of the triple couloir, but she nailed it. You'll see. And we scored 10 days of high pressure in a row. It was an epic, but it was also a slog. So this is just looking at the fjord. It was absolutely stunning. And as we rode down these beautiful Arctic lines in Norway, I take a deep breath and let it sink in. Full Moon 2 has begun, and in that moment, I started to see how motherhood and snowboarding could coexist, a balance I never thought was possible until now. And as I reflect on my own journey that brought me here, I've come to realize that snowboarding has been my life's greatest teacher. The lessons I've learned in the backcountry have profoundly shaped how I navigate life now, especially being a new mom. And the most meaningful moments come from the unexpected turns, the zigs when we thought we'd be zagging. Whether it's pivoting careers or reimagining our goals, we're constantly evolving. And reinvention takes courage, the courage to let go of who we once were and to step into who we're meant to become. We can't control what's ahead, but we can tune in to where we want life to take us. The ups and downs are inevitable, but it's in this messiness that we truly learn who we are and what we're capable of. So take a moment to embrace the unpredictability of life, trust the future, and know that it's in those zigs and zags, the unexpected turns, where the most meaningful moments are waiting to be found. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks.
Come on, y'all. Give it up for Leanne now.